Yes, love's a secret weapon. Yeah!
Hi, I'm Donna Loren.
And I'm Dr. Adam Gerace.
And you are listening to Love's a Secret Weapon podcast.
Chapter 21, Casting My Spell on You.
I took a black cat, a cave bat, a sleeping in a pot. I took a blue snake, a green snake, I tied him in a knot. I took a hog jaw, a dog's paw, and hung him on the line. I took a horse head, a green hair, I made a crazy sign. I'm casting my spell on you, casting my spell on you, casting my spell on you. Never gonna be untrue, no. Gold shoe, an old shoe, and hit him in the ground. Took an old dish, a dry fish, and made a crazy sound. Took a goose egg, a frog leg, and hit him in the sack. I got a hit too, a tattoo, a genie on my back. I'm casting my spell on you, casting my spell on you, casting my spell on you. It's gonna be untrue, no. All right.
The climate in Honolulu at the time was very depressed from 9/11. Closer to Christmas, less than a month later, our first celebrity client came in. It was Alicia Keys. She was in Honolulu to promote her first hit, Fallin'. Ironically, we were playing her CD at the boutique when she walked by our display of a mannequin that was a reproduction of me from the 60s, sitting in a ball chair originally designed by Aero Arneo and reproduced by Room Service in Los Angeles. Was it hearing her music that drew her in, or a darling little jacket by Marc Jacobs that she ended up purchasing? That really changed the tone of our business. Our Isabella Fiore rep was visiting Hawaii and stopped by too. She was completely blown away by the lines that we were carrying and suggested we include Juicy Couture. It was through Liz's recommendation that we ultimately carried Juicy, our #1 product. This was the peak of interest about Paris Hilton and her sister Nikki. Nikki loved Juicy Couture and began shopping with us whenever she was in her hotel. It was also a time of Harajuku. Young female Japanese tourists were demonstrating their liberation. Our denim lines that revealed a woman's navel and midriff were very appealing to them. Juicy displayed their name on the backside of their low-rising velour tracksuits. But what was most attractive to them was the signature Nikki wrote on our wall. Our business appeared to be growing. Maybe we did make the right move. The changes that took place in our life is an understatement. Once we decided to focus on Oahu, it just didn't flow to keep a boutique open on the Big Island. The first year was difficult for Jared and me because I still had my atelier in our building on the Big Island. Essentially, that's where my work was. Jared was bacheloring at our Diamond Head apartment, and I was living alone on the Kohala Coast in a condo that was an investment property of ours. It was a shock to my system to live alone because I had never done it before. Juicy Couture was flying out the door. So were 7 jeans and Lacoste polo shirts. Amazon contacted Jared because someone from their company ordered from us and liked our service. And they realized that the lines we carried would be good for them. This really expanded our business and gave us much needed visibility. We were growing exponentially and seriously contemplated purchasing a building of our own that could serve us as a warehouse fulfillment center for the internet, and an office for Jared, an office for his son who was doing all the tech work, another office for our bookkeeper, and a third boutique adjacent to the warehouse. Ultimately, we did purchase our own building in Honolulu. This time, I approached the boutique in a very conceptual way, incorporating the internet within the store. Remember, this is 2002. I designed a wall with 3 oversized touchscreen monitors. There were samples of every item we carried in the store for customers to see up close and personal. When it came time for them to select something in their size and color, the next step was ordering on one of these screens, which were directly linked to our warehouse. On another wall, we had a secret window for the merchandise to magically appear. Customers were blown away. A highlight of our online business came shortly after Tom Cruise proposed to Katie Holmes in Rome, and they were photographed on the back of a motorcycle. She was carrying an Isabella Fiore handbag she had received as a gift from the company. After that, everyone wanted it. We had a long-term relationship with Isabella Fiore, and when we visited them in LA, we decided to ask for an exclusive for this bag, and they agreed. They agreed to give us a month head start over the department stores, any other stores, and any online retailers. We sold 700 purses, which equaled $100,000, and we shipped them here and all over the world.
If you think back to the 60s, if you can think back to the 60s, there were very few people as visible as the woman you're about to meet. Folks like Annette Funicello, Connie Stevens, Shelley Fabre. That's why Donna Loren from the Big Island is our story of the week.
Sunshine, lollipops, and rain. Everything that's wonderful is what I hear when we're together. Right, and a lucky head when you'll hear the great house disappear, dear, and I feel so fine. Just to know that you are mine. My life is
Donna Loren was one of the biggest stars of the 60s and 70s. She was a recording artist at age 9, a stage performer, commercial, television, and movie star. Donna was recognized around the world before she got out of her teens. And the big break came from the folks at Dr. Pepper.
relax, refresh, the flavor's fine. It's Dr. Pepper time.
There was a nationwide search for the Dr. Pepper girl. It was a 7-year contract that was being offered. I was 16 years old. I was flown to Chicago, sat down on a stool, told to turn around with my back facing the camera, and then I was supposed to gracefully move to the camera. I took off a little bit too fast and went all the way around, kind of fell off the stool, I guess that's what they wanted.
The word got out about our boutique at the Hilton Hawaiian Village because there was a television installed silently playing my movies. A show called Hawaiian Moving Company was alerted that the co-owner of ADASA had had a career in the 60s. Consequently, they decided to do a feature on me and combined what I was doing now and what I was doing then. It must have been a very popular segment because everywhere I went in Honolulu, people seemed to know me and told me they saw it. I was beginning to feel that my new voice was that of a designer, although in my heart of hearts, I knew that I would always think of myself as a singer. There was one dress that I designed that became very popular after we moved to the Hilton. I reinterpreted a traditional holoku dress, which hula dancers wear. It was the first time a stretch fabric looked like a formal dress. My bathing suit fabric had a 20% lycra, and so I could use it for other garments in kind of an innovative way. Today you find stretch in practically everything, but to my customers, it was a unique experience. It hugged their body, so they really didn't need any undergarments, which was going back to the days of the old grass skirt. My holoku was full length and even had a fishtail that simulated a train. We attracted the attention of Miss Hawaii, who was a hula dancer, and she began wearing my garments. What made me unique was that my line was exclusive to our boutiques. Donald Pliner consented to let me custom color a sandal of his and imprint my own label on it. ADASA was very meaningful to me. First and foremost, it was a family business, and I thought it would last forever. Then came the economic downturn. It didn't take long before we realized the corporate giants were dominating the marketplace. I would like to think that family businesses have a place in America, but that just isn't the trend now. Our lease was coming up for renewal at the Hilton, which we declined. It became too risky to function as a retailer in this climate. We had to let 25 people go, which was very, very painful. Fortunately, we retained ownership of our warehouse building, so it wasn't all for naught. What a whirlwind.
What a whirlwind indeed. A really zippy chapter going into so many different experiences for you, Donna, and for your team, as well as taking us back to early 2000s with some brands that were, some still are, but some brands that were particularly iconic at that time. I'm just taken back to the whole Juicy Couture. What would we call that? That was a real revolution at the time, wasn't it?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I mean, actually, it's still in my wardrobe, and I'm so fond of. I mean, there were two young women in Los Angeles that started this design work, and they, of course, started in their garage and then found a small factory in Los Angeles. So everything was made in the USA, and it was made in a certain mindset where literally I remember reading that Karl Lagerfeld received one of their tracksuits and he loved it.
Right.
So, I mean, nothing like a kind of a below the waist, very comfortable, well cut, leg on a pant that you just scoot on and it's washable. Yes, the design that these ladies created was literally a fashion phenomenon. And well, I'll tell you, one time when I was back in California and living in Beverly Glen Canyon,
Yes.
Jared and I would take a drive over Mulholland to Coldwater Canyon, And rather than going down into the San Fernando Valley, we would take a right on something called Franklin Canyon, which was formerly owned by the Doheny family. It was a water reservoir. And a beautiful, beautiful canyon. I mean, again, it's like living in Beverly Glen, is like living in the country and the city. And then up on Mulholland, by the time you get to Franklin Canyon, you are really in like a forest setting with trees that are hundreds of years old. And a stream that probably comes from, an underwater source. At any rate, we used to go there quite often to walk. And there were two lakes. There were two lakes. Besides their water. Now the Doheny family didn't have it anymore, but their setup for distributing water was still intact. Next to the amphitheater that they built, a very small amphitheater, a very intimate situation, but tucked away, kind of hidden from the world. You had to know about it. So anyway, one day there was one lake, there was a smaller lake that I loved to walk around. And there were ducks in the lake, and not the lace, the lake. And there were koi fish, big, mature koi fish of all beautiful colorations, and turtles all over the place. So, it was a beautiful, beautiful path around this small lake. So one day, guess who's there?
Okay, yes. Ooh,
who? Wearing Juicy.
Well, it could be a few, but tell me.
Kim Kardashian.
Ah, right.
And one of her sisters, which, I was paying too much attention to her. So, yeah, Juicy was one of those. I think it became a cultural phenomenon. And then the fact that, they were a little outlandish and put Juicy on the derriere.
Yes. Completely iconic, yeah.
And, and it's a strong statement for a female.
Well, it's very true, and certainly the way it also mixed. I think they went for the celebrity clientele, at least for. I think they used to send them out to famous people in the hope that they would wear them, and then you had people like Madonna and Paris Hilton, of course, and Jennifer Lopez and Britney Spears, and all of those people wearing it. So that was your number one seller in the boutique?
It was, and it was just one of those phenomenons, and it was also our number one seller online.
Yeah.
And I kind of complimented some of the pieces, if somebody didn't want an outfit, but they want, they had lots of selections, and sometimes they chose one of my things, that I created to coordinate. So it was kind of a boutique of my dreams, where you find luxury brands, but you also find something original. And I don't know anyone, well, you tell me, that doesn't love having something that nobody else has.
Well, that's exactly it, isn't it? You love to have something so unique, to yourself, or at least to try to put your own spin on it. So yeah, no, I think that's dead on the money in terms of what we all want. We all want to feel unique, and fashion is such an important part of that. And then you sort of marry up all of those brands that you spoke about, and the Tom Cruise, Katie Holmes phenomenon as well at the time, and then with this internet business, which, as you said, in 2002, that was incredibly innovative. Where did you come up with this idea?
So, well, back on the Big Island, probably before 2000. Well, Jared's son is a programmer, and he was still a young man, and so we hired him.
Yeah.
To start organizing, and I have to say something about my husband. He, like you, is a Taurus. And what I realized is Taurus always love a return on their investment. Is that true?
Never thought about it that way. Go on, go on. Let me ponder this a moment.
And so I think that, Jared had been retired for quite a while. I
Mm,
mean, now we're just approaching our getting into our 50s.
yes.
And so when he decided to join me in my endeavor, which I never thought would become a business, he applied his former business, acumen, and together with his son's ingenuity, and then combining my daughter's ability to know fashion,
Yes.
it was just one of those magical moments. And so we actually started on the Big Island before we were concentrating on other brands to post my things,
Yeah.
my line, whether it was couture or the ready to wear. And we got some responses,
Mm,
and
mm.
that was encouraging. And so little by little, other things were added.
Yeah, for sure. And it just sounds like, and again, in a previous episode where Jared joined us, he spoke about his business career in a very sort of innovative business that he had, which was what would we call it? Was it a subscription service for companies where their staff could shop at this essentially department store?
Well, yes, I mean he had a department store membership,
Yes. Yeah.
and so it was basically a private, a retail department store
Mm.
that covered from soup to nuts. So once you entered, I don't think he had fashion, but he
Yep.
had everything for the home, and then of course electronic equipment, jewelry, and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So yeah, he but he I think he talked about starting. He thought this is the way he was thinking as a child,
Mm.
and so and he was very close to his son.
Yeah.
And so, even though his son was more of a techie, his sense of business was probably very deep because of his association with his dad.
Absolutely, you grow up around that, and you see it. And I remember your website from the early 2000s. It was fantastic.
Oh,
The fashion
thank you.
business, yeah. And I think along those lines, you kind of talk about that idea of the Hawaiian Moving Company episode, which was quite a popular episode for that TV show that kind of spoke about what you were doing now, but also went back to what you were doing before. And certainly, I remember in the early 2000s on the ADASA website, there was also a section about your former career as well. How did that feel to sort of include some of that? Because at the time,
Mm.
I guess you hadn't necessarily. There was a lot of processing to be done about
Mm.
that part of your life, but to kind of include it in this new area where people would become aware or more aware that this was who you were. How was that?
My dear Dr. Adam. Yes, I guess timing is everything.
Mm,
I've,
mm,
I've, I'm very much in alignment with who I was now.
mm, mm.
But then I hadn't really dealt with so many issues from my past
Yes.
that it was still rather difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. So was that something that perhaps Jared handled more at the time, or?
Well, he, gosh, it's kind of hard for me to say
Mm,
that. I just think he wanted the best for me, and he
yes.
wanted to encourage me, whatever made me happy,
Mm,
without indulging me. But the music didn't come until
mm,
the business closed, and it became a kind of an expression of my emotions afterward.
mm,
So, but the irony of this whole experience we lived in Honolulu for about 7 years,
mm,
and we had our contract with the Hilton for 5 years, and the emotional stature or whatever, experience I was having in Honolulu, I intend to discuss more in depth in the future, but it was very healthy for me. And, I think it's all about, as you were talking about in a few episodes before, value. There was a sense of value, because there was a focus of what I was doing, and I was being, there was some receptivity. So there became, this, rather than just giving, it was a give and take, give and take, give and take. And it just put me in a position of more balance. And I also think that Honolulu has that energy because, when I was studying fashion, I incorporated learning about chakra energy.
Yes. Yeah.
And the islands of Hawaii line up like the chakras.
I remember you saying this. Yes.
And Honolulu on Oahu is the throat chakra.
Kind
And,
of perfect.
yeah, and that represents commerce and expression. And so it was, and of course, the evenness of the climate. It's just beyond, as you were, talking about, being in Australia now, and it's winter, but there's a warming trend and then a cooling trend, and all over the world, everybody's topsy-turvy. We don't know what to expect. There's fires in Hawaii,
Yeah.
etc.
As we talk right now, there is. Yeah. And yeah, like I was saying before we came on the air, just it's been the last couple of days of some pockets of warmth, and it just transforms you. So an even climate, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, the temperature, and maybe it's the vibe in Honolulu, for me anyway, was it was very harmonious. So I really I look forward to returning, actually, and kind of relaxing rather than incorporating living there and working. So
I was going to ask, was it like you said, it was a very conducive lifestyle, but it sounds like it was very busy as well.
it was so extreme. I mean, we'd get up in the morning, and maybe I said this before, but since we lived in an apartment right next to the ocean,
Yeah.
and there was a stairway out by the ocean going down into kind of like a pool where it was very swimmable. And we made a choice every morning: should we take a shower or should we just jump in the ocean? I mean, and of course that's so healing as well.
Absolutely, to have the time to do that, and the making the time every morning to set the day up that way, even though it's going to be a busy day or a challenging day, to be able to start the day with that intention, I think sounds really important. To see what is going to go on. I think I'm remembering also of this time, that talking about the old career alongside the new career, and what finding a voice as a designer at that time. There was the CD, the very best of CD that came out. How did that come about for our audience? Because I know a lot of people obviously bought that CD, and which had a collection of your Capitol recordings on there. How did that come about? Do you remember?
Oh, I remember now that there was a man, and Jared would know his name, who contacted us. Yes, that's the way it was. Okay, we didn't pursue that. Somebody came to us,
Right.
and wanted, somebody who was a fan of the 60s, and so that's how that came about. And he printed up however many copies and distributed them until that was done. So, yeah.
Very cool. You never know who you're going to find, no matter where you are in the world and no matter what you're doing.
Totally. And I love that, there's always these surprises that, from the past that are so rewarding and fulfilling to reconnect with.
Absolutely, because people always managed to find you at some point, didn't they? Even during all
Yeah.
these years. Yeah.
I mean, it's like, it's like going to a reunion, you can go to a high school reunion if you live long enough, but that's 50 years or whatever, even a 20-year reunion, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if you haven't seen someone for so long.
Yeah. Yep. It absolutely is. That's a nice way of putting it, I think. And
So, but what I consolidated in this chapter is our episode of 5 years at the Hilton,
yes.
and the quick decline. I mean, it was like an earthquake opened up, and the economic downturn in 2007 was just devastating. And so, we had to move on, and it was it's kind of heartbreaking that when you're working with so many people, you have a 5-year relationship with, and then suddenly it all changes.
I think that's really sobering when we realize that we think back to that time and that downturn and the financial crisis of that time, but to realize for you as a sort of a case study of how quickly things could turn from some such success, and like you said, having to let go of a business, having to let go of people that you employed, and I guess perhaps also to figure out what were you going to do next.
And Adam, I'm sure that you and so many listeners can relate to this, that when the rug is pulled out from under you and you enter the unknown, I mean, we've talked about this. There's so much uncertainty. And many years now, it's how it's affected me personally is, shown me what true humility is. And humility has led me to such a clean, clear vision of where to put my energy. And, and no, it's not perfect. Nothing is. But, you know, I just heard about how the darkness is bringing the shadow side out in all of us. And so many of us think, well, life is good, or it might not be good for them, but it's good for me. But what's happening is we all have a shadow side, and it may not even be from this lifetime. It may be from our ancestors that we came here to heal.
Yes. Yeah.
And I feel like we're all in this incredible soup together, and all over the world, dealing with whatever we need to go forward. And so you get sideswiped, and you get shocked. And I believe that where I've been going through this for now since 2007. It's a long time, and it's a blink in terms of healing a lifetime or lifetimes. But I realized that that's kind of my journey. And when we talk about courage, that's what it takes to face your dark side, to face the shadows that you have in you, to be that honest. It's brutal.
Yeah.
And and it's so crazy, because I think that it shows you resilience, and it shows you that sense of balance that you can find to learn about your emotional reactions and kind of temper them. What do you think?
Absolutely. That whole idea of learning how you tick and where do those emotions come from, and not having that ability to almost step back and watch and observe it, and realize what they are, and not get so caught up in them, or to at least be aware of when that is happening, because so many people don't have that awareness. And I think things keep coming up for them where it's, why is there always conflict in my life? Why is there always upset? All of these things, and to actually step back and to see those reactions which have been formed, as you said, whether people consider that to be something that's maybe happened across lifetimes, or whether in their own lifetime due to the ways that they were raised, or the ways that they've developed, or the life experiences they've had. To be aware of those things, like we've spoken about before, to be able to step back and to observe one's thoughts and one's emotions with some of that balanced awareness. I think any time that we need to commit to this, which, as you said, can be years to do, but to have that commitment does demonstrate that resilience, that want to not only be able to manage what is going on and to bounce back from difficulty, but also to grow from it as well. Resilience can also be to grow as well as to sort of, sometimes when we think of resilience, we think of something happening and returning to kind of a state where we were. But if something significant is going on, it's often not just returning back to where we were, but hopefully have grown from it and to learn something from it as well.
Indeed, honey. And, I think what has happened to me is that whatever intuition I've ever had, I listen to my inner voice, but you don't always follow it, you know? Like in my little song, Love It Away. I say, do you want to go left? Do you want to go right? Well, listen to your voice inside, listen to your heart. But you don't always, it's like something distracts you. Your ego gets involved. No, I can do it. No. And so what's happened to me recently is that whatever intuition that I've had in my life has heightened. And I don't know what that means, but kind of what I'm thinking is that in terms of intuition is that you might sense things that are about to happen more. And maybe, stop for a moment and just, decide, listen to your inner voice and decide, well, maybe I shouldn't go there.
Yeah, that's exactly it. There's maybe when that real voice is, that voice we can trust, and that voice that does make good decisions can be heard, rather than, it's hard, as you said, we're either distracted or even, distorted by all the other things that have entered into that internal voice we have, or that internal monologue we have. And as you said, some of it can be ego, some of it can be our experiences, some of it can be we've developed a heightened sense of threat or fear and things like that, and that gets all in the way of being able to make those intuitive decisions, and to engage with our own decisions, but also I think to engage with other people as well. This is a bit of a tangent, but I remember this study from I will go on one if you can indulge me, but
sure.
I think it was a study from the 1970s, and I think it was done in, I don't think it was a seminary, but I think it was somewhere where people were sort of studying religion. So you expect these people to be quite altruistic, and they kind of set up an experiment, these psychologists, where I think they had someone on the side of a building or somewhere who seemed to need help, who was on the ground or something like that. And because they had put into the heads of the participants that you needed to be somewhere at a certain time, they didn't even notice that person. It wasn't that they didn't, the whole idea was, how do people empathize? It's like they couldn't even empathize because they didn't even notice them to begin with. The experiment was set up to see, how does someone empathize and help someone? And the person was so singularly caught up in what they had to do, they didn't even notice that there was something going on. So
so they had their blinders on.
Yes, yeah, and I think so often we do that. We're so and not, that's more practical about noticing something, but I think it does talk to that idea that so often in life we're so having to get somewhere, having to do something, that we don't just stop or we're not present in our surroundings. You know, we're very caught up
Mm-hmm.
in the past, or we're very caught up in the future,
Mm-hmm.
and we're not here right now. And I struggle with this quite a lot, so it's a
Mm-hmm.
learning experience for me.
Mm-hmm. It really does require a form of discipline to
Mm,
catch yourself. And what I'm convinced of is that we all come in with wisdom,
mm,
and there's so many distractions that take us away from, knowing who we are and
mm,
what we need to do that is true to us.
yes.
And and so that wisdom is in us, and call on it, that inner voice. Call on it and take a moment and, and with for yourself, to be true to yourself.
Mm,
And and I trust that, that is going to shift your energy, create more balance, and and your heart will calm down, your mind will settle. you know all of the tensions and the stresses, I think, are due to literally not being allowed to be who you are.
mm. And I think this idea as well that whether that comes from, again, what we've spoken about, you know, obligation, whether that comes from whatever else, but also this idea that sometimes people in the world and people in certain politics, perhaps, or seeking to control, will draw on that. Will try to put people out of touch with being able to find out who they are and what they actually think and what they want by doing things like appealing to fear, um, appealing to riling people up, all these sorts of things that then, when we're in fear or when we're in anger, we can't engage or we can be led astray. I think that's
Ooh.
probably all I need to say about that. But yeah,
Mm.
we don't get to actually, what do I think, what do I feel, and not to be drawn up in this, which is hard. That's really difficult.
And those, I know I've dealt with my anger issues, and I'm, feeling a lot more grounded in all the chaos that's going on all over the
Mm,
planet. But those who are listening, who feel anger, who feel frustration, who feel anxiety, I think it's so vitally important to, just for a moment, have an awareness of something that's in nature. You know,
mm,
focus on a rock. You know, focus on, oh, I saw a bird flying by for a minute.
mhm,
You
mhm,
know, it's because, I think nature is really trying to speak to us. I think nature has a very high intelligence. Maybe they're smarter than us,
mm,
you know, because they have existed for a lot longer than we have. And so I think we should listen, you know, to what Mother Nature is telling us, whether it's a storm or we had a major lightning storm lately, here. And no matter what she's telling us, I mean, all she can do is, snap her fingers, you know what I mean? And make something happen. She can make a tidal wave happen. She can make,
mm,
a forest fire happening. Look at the boreal forest, 10 million acres
mm,
was burned,
mm,
from lightning.
mhm. Yeah. I think you're so right, though, this idea of, and it goes to that idea of grounding. They often talk in psychology about grounding exercises where you're finding yourself anxious or overwhelmed, is to notice something about your environment, because it'll get you back to the present moment. And that could be, yeah, something in, if you're inside, that could be something inside. You start looking around the room at what's on the shelves and what does the clock say. And or if you're outside, or you can get outside, to look at a bird going up a tree, or whatever it else, a bug or a butterfly flying, or just something that can get you back to that present moment, and it's almost a form of soothing yourself when you're so overwhelmed,
Mm-hmm.
and when you're feeling soothed. I can't even get that word out, but we're going to try. It's not an easy one. But when we are in that state, that's when we're at our calmest, when we can make ourselves feel warmth during difficult times, and when we can bond with other people as well. Of course, recently Lucy and I were walking in the park, and some of the noisy miners, and they're called that for a reason, these birds, but they are they've got a distinctive kind of call, shall we say, but they're also sometimes nesting in the trees that we walk in. So you've got to be very mindful there, because they will try to swoop you to get you away from their
nest, of
Yes,
course.
and that's understandable, but yeah, you just got to be mindful at that time, or you're going to get a noisy miner to the head.
I'm so proud of your awareness. Oh my goodness, you and Lucy are thinking not just about yourselves, you're thinking about and caring about their welfare as well when you enter their domain.
Well, I used to have one noisy miner that used to, I don't see him so often. Well, I haven't seen him in a while, and I think I knew him for a few years, but every day he would be sitting on the mirror of my car, looking at himself. So we were good friends, but yeah.
That's a funny image.
Well, I think we've covered a lot today. Before we introduce our next fan guest, and a fun conversation, you reminded me of something that you sent me recently, that this kind of harkens back to an episode of quite a while ago, but where you spoke about going to Italy and ending up in the south of Italy in a wonderful little place, and you recently came across that place talking about fashion today, in a sort of fashion situation. Tell our listeners about that one, who might remember that.
Oh, great. Oh, I'd
situation.
love to. Well, it's amazing that you've been there as well as myself,
Oh, I
right?
haven't. No, I haven't been there yet. I've been to other parts of Italy. I've not been to. We're talking about Alberobello here in Puglia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It was an enchanting experience, and this ancient town of 2,000 years old that has maintained the same lifestyle and the same way they live. Dolce Gabbana decided to do their 2023 season opening for spring in Arbobello.
Fantastic.
And yeah, I sorry, I thought you were there, and I thought you'd enjoy it. Those the Truly houses, which are these lime kind of washed white facades that are round, and they're cone shaped
Yes.
roofs, and that's called a Truly.
Yes.
And these people, were so lovely to me, and I'll never forget them. And then to see Dolce Gabbana, how many years later? So many years later. Oh my gosh. I was there in 1967, and here we are in 2023.
Yes. Yeah.
And literally the town, okay, my personal opinion is Dolce Gabbana, yay, another standing ovation for them. Their designs are incredible year after year. They're my favorite leopard print.
Right.
Oh yes. And they came into that town, and you could see they probably transformed the town and had so much help, making sure that all of those ancient narrow roads were cleared, all the cobblestone, and all the houses were whitewashed immaculately, and the town center where they had their main show, you could see the models walking through the village and showing their beautiful clothing and shoes and hats, and the whole ensemble. I can't even imagine how Dolce Gabbana came in, invested in uplifting and the town in terms of spirit, but also in terms of everyone getting involved, and it's not a big town. So
Yeah.
everyone getting involved in this activity. You could see locals sitting on stoops all along the way and and welcoming this very high
Yes.
fashion show. It was just enchanting, and I just absolutely love seeing it. And it's like time stands still. Even though Dolce Gabbana came in and kind of gave it a whole facelift,
Mm.
it still has its authenticity.
Yes,
And it's a one of a kind.
and that's the thing. I think it's even a World Heritage Site at this point
Yes,
there
you're right.
because of those houses, that style of house, and just how charming. So anyone that does want to see this, there are videos on, I guess, YouTube and all over the internet of their recent fashion show in our Arbor Bello. So
Oh, yeah.
fantastic.
And may I say that I support fashion because I think that art expresses what's happening in that moment,
Mm, mm,
whether it's fashion or any other form of art.
mm,
But the fashion designers, even though it's a luxury item because everything is couture and what goes into it, it's an entire cottage industry that's been going on for a very long time. Once royalty wasn't the only way to,
mm,
you know, to have this beautiful craftsmanship for whatever they wore. And to me, it's just an amazing way to see the expression of how a designer says, you know, this is what I support in feminism. This is what I support in masculinity, and
mm,
and this is what I support in gender equality. And you see it all the time.
mm, mm.
And and then you might see a time when the designers, years before it happens, start designing to tell you what the future is going to be like.
Mm,
They have a
mm.
sense of that, like they might start focusing on military jackets
Yes.
or combat boots.
Mm, mm.
And it's true, you can see how these trends kind of mirror what's to come in the world, because these artists have a sense of that. So I'm just amazed at some of the designers that do that. And of course, I also support, even though personally I can't, but
Mm,
those that do, unfortunately, I know, it's contrary to my belief system, but, the reason that the couture business is still alive is because of the extreme wealth that only a few have. And,
mm.
and I, that's a conflicting subject. But the fact that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people, generations of these people that have been working in these environments, in these ateliers in France and Italy and wherever, in England, that are creating these incredible garments
Yes.
and supporting, the silk industry and supporting all kinds of industries. And you know what? I think that the leather industry is changing because people like Stella McCartney, who's vegan and
Mm, mm.
only uses non-animal products in her designs, that's becoming a consciousness in the fashion world, where the tanneries that use certain chemicals that are extremely toxic are being talked to and having to change their ways.
Mm.
So, it's just a window to the world to me.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe sport would be a window to the world to someone else, or some other venue, some
Mm,
other venture
mm, mm.
would be a window to the world. It's my language, you know.
Yeah, that's and whatever someone's language is, whether it's fashion, whether it's design, as in design of furniture or I'm thinking of all that atomic age sort of stuff when you're talking about this, looking to the future, and I think that leads in quite well to our next fan guests who are quite involved in the oh, there's Lucy saying hello, to our next guest in the Tiki movement, I guess. So I look forward to talking about that.
Welcome, everyone, to Love's a Secret Weapon podcast and my very special guests who are in the state of Arizona with me today. I just love our eye contact, our direct eye contact with a tear or two. And you'll hear from Joe David. Joe, welcome.
Thank you very much, Donna.
And his lovely, gorgeous wife, Marlow Harris.
Hello.
Who is very shy, but we'll warm her up. And they were attending, or they just have attended an event that is involved with Tiki Oasis. And if you all remember, Tiki Oasis is where I launched my book, Pop Culture. Pop 60s. I never get that right, do I? We'll have to republish that book so I can get it right. And Dr. Adam, please correct me if I.
No, definitely Pop 60s. I'm here as well, but I'm a little bit jealous that I am all the way over in Adelaide. But I'm glad that you can all get together. Myself and Lucy the Cavoodle were standing by here.
The Cavoodle. And Dr. Adam, our hearts are always connected, no matter where on the planet we are.
Absolutely right.
So these guys drove down to where my husband Jared and I live, and we just had lunch together and kind of schmoozed a little bit and got to know each other. And I'm telling you, I think this interview may not ever stop. So there is another Tiki Oasis going on in Phoenix, Arizona once a year. And then where is it also? Joe?
Are we talking about Tiki Caliente in Palm Springs? And we go there every year. We go to Palm Springs a couple of times a year in May and October usually.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And Joe, tell our listeners about what exactly is Tiki Oasis. As Donna said, some of our listeners would be familiar with it, and Donna also performed at Tiki Oasis. But what is Tiki Oasis?
Well, it's about the music culture, kind of the mid-century modern retro culture, artist culture, cocktail culture, lounge music, surf music,
cars, furniture,
yeah,
architecture.
It's a all-encompassing cultural movement. Burlesque even sometimes is mixed in there.
Excuse me, we have some participation from the missus.
It's a mid-century modern. I think it's an homage to that whole beach party, beach blanket bingo, tiki, World War II, South Pacific view of the world. And it brings in all kinds of Polynesian pop, and it brings in like lowbrow art, and it brings in burlesque and rockabilly and surf music.
And the one thing that we were talking about over lunch is that you live in Seattle, and you have lots of different tentacles in various avenues, magazine, real estate, museum, lots of different activities that you guys are so incredibly involved in. But going to these events is like a surrogate
It's
family.
like a reunion, because we see the same, we meet people every year that we all like the same things, and it's a way for us to get together and celebrate that. Like we might have a seminar on Tupperware, or we might, I mean, like, you remember the Tupperware parties that were so
Absolutely.
popular in the
Yes.
60s? So they'll do like a little fake, like not a Tupperware party, but they'll do a seminar on the epistemology of the Tupperware. Like, it's just crazy. And like, who could talk,
Epistemology?
like the theory and the history of Tupperware.
Wait a minute.
Which you would think, or like those Hellman's mayonnaise cookbooks from 1962.
I have a Betty Crocker.
Yes, they'll do a whole hour-long seminar on that. And you think, well, how can someone talk for an hour? And by the end of the hour, we're all wanting more, and we're clapping, and we're, more, we want more slides and more
Tupperware.
I mean, it's just crazy. People love that whole lounge, Martin Denny music. They love beach party movies. So they'll do like a seminar on Frankie Avalon and Annette Funicello. They'll just go in depth and talk about
Wait a second, Marlo. What about a seminar on Donna Loren? You have to suggest that one.
Well.
Glowing kisses to you.
I asked Donna if she was going to perform again, and I'm not quite sure if she wants to do that. But that was in 2016 when she performed at Tiki Oasis, right? When she introduced her book, and she did who was the band, Donna? Who did you have?
Deke Dickerson.
You had Deke Dickerson, and wow,
and a group,
and then you had go-go dancers. And who were the dancers? Did you just meet them that day, or were these...
Actually, my collaborator at the time, Dominic Priori, arranged for some of the musicians.
That was fab. They had they had a dance routine, it looked like, and somebody must have choreographed that. I loved it. So
I think the music just moved them.
Yeah.
I
think probably if you ever wanted to perform again, you would just find another band. Like, there's already pre-formed bands who would love to play.
See this girl? I'm telling you, get her started. We're warming her up now.
She's
sizzling.
Born promoter.
Friends of mine to perform, like they're coming from Seattle to perform at this Tiki Caliente that we're going to in Palm Springs. And if they would love, if you came to Seattle, we would put on a show.
You have a place in the back seat?
Yes, we do shows and we do events. We do an event in Seattle called Tiki Trailer Bash at a restored trailer park, sort of like the Shady Dell here at Bisbee. But there's one on the Washington coast called the Southwester, and it has 30 restored Airstream trailers, and there's a big stage, and we put on shows there every year. And we put on shows all around the Pacific Northwest. And we have a new website, Northwest Tiki Underground. And it has, because sometimes we have to go underground a little bit with certain people because they don't understand Tiki and they think it's cultural appropriation and they want to cancel us. So it's important that we stay nimble. And if we have to do that, we're able to do that and remain anonymous. I know in Australia, there's a huge Tiki movement. There's a lot of Tiki bars there and a couple of galleries that specialize in that art.
Do you have any in Adelaide, Adam?
It's interesting you say that. We do have a Tiki bar up near the beach, which is just delightful. I wasn't aware of the Tiki movement here. Perhaps in Adelaide, not so much, but I'll have to look into that in, say, Melbourne or Sydney, or maybe even where the weather is conducive to that in Brisbane or wider Queensland.
So would that be surfing territory?
Yes. So
that
probably
makes
closer
sense,
to
right?
the beaches, which would make sense. But I had no idea of that, and I'm so pleased. And I mean, I'm interested in how you both became involved in this. But even when you were talking about that idea of the Tupperware seminars, when I was up in university over 25 years ago, we'll say, I did cultural studies as part of my psychology, or as something different to the psychology. And they were the kinds of lectures that we would do. It would be about modern objects, about 1950s culture, cookbooks, the recipes of that time. So I'm so glad that this has been really taken up and given, because that seemed a little bit fringe back then, but given these full-day festivals, that's amazing.
Yeah, there's thousands of people that come, and they come from all over the world, and they have them all over the U.S. They have them on the East Coast at Lake George. It's called Luau on the Lake. They have them in Florida. There's one called the Hukilau in Fort Lauderdale. There's a number in California, of course, Tiki Oasis. We have one in Portland up by where we live called Tiki Con. And they have some in Australia. There's a huge movement. And there's a bunch of Tiki bars right there in Adelaide. There's one called Hades Hula House.
Yes.
There we go.
And there's another one called Thousand Island.
The hula house is where I went, yes.
Yeah.
And Thousand Island is my husband's favorite salad dressing.
Oh. How
And
about that? There's also the Susie Wong bar, it looks like. So there's a number of them. You just need to get out more.
I guess we do have to get out, Paula. I'll put a hula on Lucy, and away we'll and Bob, and away we'll go. And I know you mentioned also Martin Denny, and Donna, I don't know if we've spoken about Martin Denny before, but did you share your connection with Martin Denny with our guests?
Thank you for opening that door. Yes, my first husband's father owned Liberty Records and discovered Martin Denny.
Wow.
How about that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, there's all of these links, that we'll discover that we have in common. This wonderful couple who really, when you communicated with me over Messenger, and I immediately got the vibe that we needed to connect. And how wonderful it is, truly, that this is a blossoming of a relationship. I feel it. And with the whole Tiki culture, there must be a fascination not only with the heavy metal cars and the designers, like the shirt you're wearing, the print you're wearing, what I'm wearing.
Love what you're wearing.
Thank you. And
mid-century jumpsuit.
Thank
Fabulous.
you. Something I purchased in Waikiki in 1965.
Probably at Liberty House.
Still, no, not at Liberty House, but I know what you're talking about. This was at, what did they call that?
Walta?
No, the International Marketplace.
Oh, I love that. Thanks for
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
They tore it down.
They actually saved the tree.
Oh, did they?
And they built the Saks Fifth Avenue behind the tree.
Oh, the
so
big band
actually,
tree.
yes. So actually that area is preserved. It's just not as authentic as it was in the way past. So.
Right. We've got a picture of that, of you there. We'll have to put that up or ask.
That's right. With Jimmy.
that up.
I think Jimmy O'Neill. We were standing in front of the International Marketplace.
Hi, I'm Donna Loren to tell you about an exciting new contest from Dr. Pepper. 2 big first prizes, 2 dazzling new Excalibur SS Roadsters. It's an $8,000 replica of the 1927 Mercedes-Benz SSK. 300 horsepower, automatic transmission, air horns, and other sporty accessories. It's Dr. Pepper's exciting new Treads, Threads, and Treasure contest. Remember, 2 Excaliburs, plus an authentic raccoon coat, and money! $200 a month for 12 full months! Plus over 1,500 other prizes, including color television sets, electric typewriters, and thousands in cash. Enter now! Pick up a carton or 2 of Dr. Pepper with official entry blank. Enjoy Dr. Pepper, the distinctively different soft drink. And don't forget, Dr. Pepper's Threads, Threads, and Treasure. And hurry!
Let's dig in, and I was going to lead into something that is very ideal, because after World War II, what you were saying is the culture started to bloom, and I would remember billboards with the latest car. It's like the T-Bird, the Corvette, even the station wagon. Not my favorite, but every year you waited for those gorgeous models to come out. That was part of it. I mean, my next door neighbor, Opal Sullivan, had an aqua trim on her 50s track house.
Mm.
And her car parked in the driveway was either an Oldsmobile or a Buick, something like that, that was aqua and white. Inside her house, all aqua rugs, you know.
Yeah.
and so we lived that way. But we also could look up at the sky and see the moonrise, clear, beautiful, snowy white, coming from the horizon and going all through the various stratospheres up to, you know, its orb and then its descendants. By 1967, I started seeing in Los Angeles the moon coming up, going through layers of rust color.
Mm-hmm.
And so may I just pause for a moment and ask you, in this whole, shall we say, celebrating that period of time, and you guys are living it now, 50 years later, you're living it and appreciating it, and whatever came from that period of time has sustained.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. So now, what happened to the leaders in that time period? And I'm even going to quote our president, Eisenhower, that warned us about the military industrial complex. And here we are. Do you think, if you ever did invite me, that we could actually say, hey, wait a minute, this is all about all the wonderful things that we cherish about that period. And guess what? We had clean air. We had clean water. We had healthy crops growing in the fields. And look what's happened. Let's take it all back to what was so good about that time period. What do you think, Joe?
Well, I wish we could. I hope we can. It's always a struggle. Part of the tiki aesthetic is about escapism. And the more crappy politics we have and the more the environment goes to hell, the more people want to escape into the old days, more nostalgic, comfortable way of life. And that's a big part of it.
Thank you for being so honest, because what you've done is you've just opened up a huge chasm to be able to say, okay, we've needed to escape because we feel trapped. But if we can take what we love and incorporate, and my favorite new word, co-create with our creator the way it was, because we want healthy soil. We want healthy children. We want good schools. We want good families. That's really the heart and soul of what you guys are celebrating, in my humble opinion.
That's
your opinion.
Well, I agree.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, Donna, because certainly, and what you were saying, Joe, that idea of that escapism, I think if we can take what people loved about that time and what was good and what we should aspire to, that doesn't have to be taking on some of or the elements of that time that were not ideal, or to put rose-colored glasses on about everything. I've been watching a program here on our ABC, which is the national broadcaster here. It's not the American ABC. And there's been a documentary series about iconic Australian objects of that post-war mid-century, things like the Hills hoist, which is the your clothesline, your old big clothesline that used to sit back in the middle of your backyard, because that was an Australian invention, or at least this version of it. And the idea that was considered the object that represented domesticity and things like that. But a lot of the speakers on this program are talking about all these great things. Were like, they're glad that come the 80s, people were tearing them out of their backyards because they were so big and took up so much room, but because they represented, the housewife being stuck in the house. So it was this idea of celebrating what was great about that time, but also seeing those other things that weren't so great, and having a balanced view, I guess, is what they were suggesting. Do you relate to that?
That is lovely.
Yeah. Well, I read a book recently called The Way We Never Were, and it was about it's about looking at the past through rose-tinted glasses and realizing how gentle and how innocent it was, and yet how sadly we were, racist, and we had lots of we didn't have a lot of opportunity, and women were discriminated against on so many levels. And so we want to take the good things from the past and try to save those and bring those forward and get rid of the bad things, which was, being in the closet if you were gay, and that sort of thing. So, how we can bring all those things together, bring all the good, because I think order, I'm not a fascist, but I do think order in our society is important. And I appreciate the order, the orderly way things were, having the trains be on time, that sort of thing. But I mean, that's, but if we can keep that and yet give ourselves freedoms, it would just make the present so much better.
I'm going to just do a comparable. So when it's a little bit off the subject, but not really. When I discovered alternative healthcare, I discovered acupuncture and Chinese herbs. And since I was 3 years old, I've had asthma. So singing to me is like a gift from God, exercising my lungs, because my lungs are always being medicated, even to this day, to function. So when I had my third child, I was taking acupuncture, and I wanted the acupuncturist to be in the delivery room with me and provide me with anesthesia through the needles, not chemicals, if I needed that. Because I had read about that, and he had told me, where needles are put to accomplish that, but not in America. The AMA was not ready. I think that acupuncture is now incorporated, but we're going back more than 40 years ago when I had my third child. So to me, it's like we don't have to lose all the knowledge and wisdom that we've acquired to incorporate the good things from the past. That's all. And but I'm so happy that you're here so that we can talk about these things. It's so enlivening, I think, and all the things, all the facilities that the avenues that you're going in, my gosh, you're blowing my mind.
Well, I just love the way we know so many people that are passionate about their beliefs these days, that are talking to one another, getting together, really connecting. And when you talk to someone that's passionate about anything, it rubs off and it's infectious. And all of a sudden you find yourself in love with what they're in love with. And it builds upon itself. And
ooh la la.
It's just a wonderful feeling to share.
Absolutely.
And looking at your Jell-O molds over there. For instance, so Donna on her wall has some old sort of mid-century copper Jell-O molds. And in Seattle, we know an artist that collected thousands of those Jell-O molds and covered their bar and restaurant and their apartment, like their house, with copper Jell-O molds.
They're heat conductors,
Oh, I did not know that. Well, in Seattle, it won't matter because it's cold there. It's very cold, but it was called the Jell-O Mold Building.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's documented, and it's long gone. But just like, who would care about Jell-O molds? But once you start talking to that person, they tell you about where they got this mold or that mold belonged to my grandmother, or I got this mold at when I went and traveled to this country and I got this Jell-O mold, or this person brought this to me. Then it becomes fascinating and interesting, and something as simple as a copper Jell-O mold becomes a reason to be, a raison d'etre. It becomes a reason to get up in the morning. I'm in search of Jell-O molds. Just
I
something
love
as simple as that.
That is
and
great.
That's the community we found with some of these tiki people and these mid-century conventions we go to, and we're this Exoticon convention in June. And there's people who were brought together through the music of Uma Zumak. Is that her name? You know who that? She's like, yes. Yeah, she's saying sort of exotic, and no one knew where she was, and they thought
Dr. Adam, please find some of her music, and we'll incorporate that in our
absolutely. What they called her, was she the singing bird? I'm probably going to get that wrong, but I went to a show a few years ago where a modern day artist played, sang her songs.
Performing there. Yes,
Yeah.
and there'll be a modern day Ima Sumac homage artist who's going to be there. So it's probably the same person.
It could
because
be.
how many could there be? Like Corla Pandit, he was an organ player. Remember Corla Pandit?
Absolutely.
And it turns out it was an African American man, but he was afraid he was going to be discriminated against, so he
Right.
pretended he was Indian, that he was from India.
Wow.
And so he traveled the world as an Indian wearing a turban,
Yeah.
which of course only if he was a Sikh would he be wearing a turban, but that's beside the point. He was actually an African American guy from the South.
And he played organ.
And he played the organ. And he played in Seattle. And he never spoke.
And he had a TV program. So did Nat King Cole and a few others. I think Spike Jones or they had 15-minute allotments in the 50s for that kind of an entertainer.
Yeah.
They wouldn't give them any longer.
And they would play like in between the commercial, like in between the films and stuff.
Like the Mohawk Showroom or something like that. Yeah. Yeah.
We're revisiting all these old people who we remember from, like we went to an event last year and they had a Heino, and a tribute artist. Heino is a German. He had white hair and he had bad eyes, so he always wore dark glasses. And he's well loved by the German people.
I only know Karl Lagerfeld.
In the 60s and 70s, and he was a singer of sort of oompa music.
Oh, how funny!
And he performed up to his 80s.
Oh,
and he just died recently. But now there's a guy that goes around impersonating Heino, who I don't even think he's German. I think he's Canadian. But he goes around to all these mid-century,
originally German, maybe originally
German. He goes around to these mid-century events and performs as the artist Heino.
Okay.
So who knows? Maybe there'll be a Donna Loren tribute artist someday.
Hey, that would be pretty cool.
I'm not dying anytime soon.
Push that phony off the stage.
Oh, I don't have to be dead. Okay.
There were Elvis tribute artists before Elvis passed.
and we haven't even had dessert yet.
She did
ply me with alcohol.
I was going to say there might have been some wine over lunch, and you're looking at your Jello molds. I'm in my lounge room looking at all my mid-century vases. I've got lots of glass. I've got a I guess it's olive green. You know the old phones, the American phones.
Oh yes,
sitting here, and even I'm going to say it's a 1964 Jim Beam whiskey bottle. And the reason that's relevant is because it's the beautiful dark green. It was the bottle that they based, or they painted one of those bottles and made it Jeannie's bottle in I Dream of Jeannie. So the iconic bottle was a 1964 Christmas Jim Beam whiskey bottle. And I've got one sitting, I'm looking at it right now.
How in the world did you acquire that, Dr. Adam?
That was just an online purchase. There's quite a few of them around. It was a end of year Christmas bottle. So it doesn't look like a Jim Beam bottle. You'd never know, but it's a beautiful bottle. And what I loved what you were saying, Marlo, was this idea that these objects have a history. They have a history of the people before you took them on yourself, but they also have the history of your family or those experiences. And then I think what I really love about this stuff is it's not, people that love it, you don't tend to just hide it away somewhere. It's the fact that it takes on a new life with the new people that are responsible for its care.
And just to add, I served these Hawaiian goblets that are definitely tiki goblets. I'm sure I'm serving rainwater with a slice of lemon, but I'm sure that originally there were Mai Tais or something with smoke hurling out of it or something. So we've incorporated, and these are from 1968. And they're still alive and well. And that's the other really good thing about talking in terms of the period of time. It was a time when things were still made by hand and the materials that were used were not overly exploited. And so all of these beautiful glassware and ceramics and clothing and automobiles and even the timber used in the houses, everything was of a better quality. And I'm not sure, but I kind of really believe that there was a higher reverence for everything that was used to make that. It's like this came from the earth. Where did the paint come from? Who made it? And what was in it, when it was originally designed. And that's something that our current culture is very, they just want to get right on to the next thing. But I just discovered in the fashion world, now I'm a little late in discovering this, but the new designer of Christian Dior is a woman, first woman since 1947. She's Italian. One of her names is Gerace. So, and she is promoting through, I think it's Bernard Arnault, who owns Christian Dior, and he's the wealthiest man in France. And he is backing her support of women and cottage industries all over the world that are sewing by hand, embroidering, beading, keeping the couture alive because of the tradition and the generations of people that have been involved in this handwork. And, when you see an object of art, Joe, how does it make you feel if it's just like something digital or if it's something that was made in the period that you love so much?
Well, I
You're
love
a painter.
the tradition of collecting is all a part of what we're talking about, and paying reverence to the past and the passions that we have about what we collect. People that go to these exotic events or tiki events are so passionate about every little thing. They collect tiki mugs, beautiful retro wear. They love to dress up, be colorful, and it becomes a part of their personality and part of the whole fun of these events of getting together that make the whole love of it and the passion of it grow time and time again. Some of the collectibles, even though there's a finite group of people that collect certain things, Whitcoe carvings, for example, that are carved from wood from the state of Washington, are collected by so many people. They get hard to find, or sandwich aisle jackets that are
Alfred Shaheen from Hawaii, who was a silk screen designer, and he did silk to screen on women's clothing and on bolts of fabric where you could have clothes made from you in the 60s. And those are loved worldwide now, and he's from Hawaii. You might have even shopped for some of his stuff when you lived there.
Did he? Well, I made my own clothes. But did he make aloha shirts?
No, not really. It was
beautiful
gowns mostly for women. Walter Clark and Alfred Shaheen.
Okay.
Both worked at the same time, and they were both based in Honolulu.
I wore a holoku on Shindig. And I still have it, so I'll check my label. Okay?
Tremendous.
Yeah.
So it does become more difficult to
Yes.
find these limited amount of things because many of the people that created them originally have passed. So, and they can't be copied. They were all made by hand. They were made original. And so there's a finite number of them that people can collect. So, of course, it drives the collector's prices up. But nothing can make you happier than finding something at a thrift shop or online or at an auction or these events always have vendors, these exotic or tiki events that we go to. They have vendors that search this stuff out. That's their job. And they bring it to these festivals, gatherings, and people eat it up because there's only a few left that you can buy. And everybody just loves them so much.
It's something you are perpetuating, let's say, from the past, which is still current, is painting portraits.
Oh, yeah. I love painting. I studied it for years and years. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts and a Master of Fine Arts in painting. I paint people in oils on canvas in a traditional way, a very realistic, figurative work. And it's something that gets in your blood, like playing music or anything else. You can't deny it. And your favorite times, well, my favorite times, are if I have a few hours that I can spend in the studio and lose myself in the painting. And I followed that path because I wanted to teach fine art on a college level. So I got all the proper degrees, and I did teach fine art on a college level for 15 years and chaired the art and design department at Cornish College of the Arts in Seattle. I still make art. Of course, I'm also very involved in graphic design. And of course,
and you have an online magazine that can be printed?
I do. I have a magazine I've been publishing since 2012. I've always published art publications. And this one is called Mirror Magazine, spelled the French way, Miroir. It's an international fine art magazine, contemporary figurative art, photography, and alternative fashion, which all mix very well together. There's no advertising in the publication. I refuse to bend my passion and use the wrong side of my brain to sell advertising. It hurts my brain to even think about it, because I have done that before. But I wanted it to be international and not Seattle-centric like some of the previous publications where I sold advertising to keep the magazine going. But then it had to be Seattle-centric. By using print-on-demand publishing, it opened up the doors so that I could be international and not have to sell advertising. And more than half of the fine artists that we publish are outside of the United States.
Tremendous.
And I love it. And you can go online and find miroirmagazine.com. You can download all of the PDFs from the last 10 years for free.
And who's on your current cover?
Well, I have several people on the current cover. One of the things that I love about print on demand is that for each issue over the last 10 years, you can go online, there are hundreds of them, I can have many featured artists, and I can give all of the featured artists that want a cover their own cover. So if I have, like on my most current issue, which is, the theme is power, and I have Cassandra Peterson, who's better known as Elvira.
Elvira, yes.
On the cover. And I have Medusa Marina, who's the world-class, most famous mermaid, living mermaid.
I love that.
And she teaches other mermaids how to be showgirls in the pool.
Yes, I've seen stuff
when you
her.
say power, are you referring to empowerment?
Yes, exactly. People who have the power within them to make themselves the art.
Expressing themselves. And sharing their,
So I have some circus performers that I love in there that do aerial circus, and they work all over the the world, really, in different Cirque du Soleil shows in Vegas.
And you were sharing, both of you were sharing with me that there's a circus, and I had never heard of it. Now I'm very curious.
Yeah. Yes, we have Teatro Zanzani in Seattle. They also had Teatro Zanzani in San Francisco and one in Chicago. Right now, I think they're all looking for new venues. The most recent one in Seattle was a 3-month run, a season.
That's long.
And they had a limited time that they could use the venue. So they're looking for a new venue now. Our youngest son worked there as a server and part of the show.
What does he do?
Sam juggles and rides the unicycle. He has aerial skills.
Oh, great.
Besides the fact that he's studying to be an airline pilot, he's expressing his passion.
He's an aerial artist.
Many ways. He's a go-getter.
I wonder why.
And how did you two meet? Was it through a love of this era, or did that come later, or was that a nice surprise? What's your story?
Oh, I was a teenager and Joe was a filmmaker, and he was making a film about kids saving the environment back in the 70s. It was like Earth Day, and it was a documentary about children saving the environment, and I was one of the children in the film.
Of course you were.
Yeah. And so so Joe made this. Yeah, I was like in high school. I was 14. So he was a filmmaker, and I just remember seeing this filmmaker thinking, God, that guy's cool. I want to marry a guy like that someday. And then like 15 years later, 20 years later, I did marry him.
Right on.
So it was just kind of fun. Almost like you two meeting at your prom.
Yes, that's true.
Because we didn't come back again. It was like sort of full circle. We didn't actually get married till I was in my 30s, but I met him when I was 14. And so for a Mother's Day gift, after we'd had several children, he got the original film that he made and had it remastered and gave it to me as a DVD so I could watch it anytime.
That's great, and that topic is topical right now. The whole idea of climate activism and young people and hope, and very.
I think it was around the first Earth Day, like 1970.
Oh, cool!
Which is odd again because I'm only 29.
That's true.
Well, yes, age. As we say, age is not important here. So.
Yes, apparently. Yeah.
And you both do a lot in this space. So what does that look like? Is that a lot of organisation? Is it how do these events work?
Well, for me, I feel like Seattle's at the end of the world. I mean, it's really at the you can't go any further unless you go through Canada up to Alaska. Like it's sort of the furthest you can go in the United States on the West Coast without leaving the country. And so I feel like, so for me to survive and be happy, I need to have things happen. And if there's no one else to do it, then I will do it. So I create a lot of events and happenings and things. And I travel to events in California and here now in Arizona. But for me to stay sane the rest of the year, if I don't make it happen, then there's nothing going on. So I tend to do a lot of event production, small, sometimes just shows, and sometimes bigger, like Tiki weekends or I did this, I really loved Elvis. I had this thing about Elvis for many years.
You and just about everyone.
And we had an Elvis mobile, and we had Elvis espresso machine. We had like a selling Elvis espresso. I bought the domain name elvispresso.com. So when we opened our Elvis coffee shop, I would have the domain name. I mean, just stupid stuff. But I just thought, well, this is someplace I'd like to go. It does not exist. Oh, I guess I should make it because it didn't exist. So I made things like that happen. I always loved the idea of a bad art museum, and there wasn't one in our town. So I made one. So about 2008.
What do you mean by bad art?
Well, we started collecting. So we collect good art, but when you see like a really magnificent paint by number or black velvet that is so hideous, and you think, well, look at this thing. I mean, I have to save it. I must own it. I must possess it. And then I started getting, and then I got one and another and another and another. Before I knew it, I had this huge collection of bad art. And then I thought, well, I need to share this with the world. And I always wanted to go to a bad art museum, and there wasn't one. So Joe and I created the official Bad Art Museum of Art. And the reason it has that name, it was 2008, and Obama was running for president, and we both thought maybe we wanted to love we wanted to love him and honor him. And so Joe came up with the name Obama, and that's an acronym for the Official Bad Art Museum of Art. So we called it the Obama Room, and it was like anyway, it still exists.
That's
It
great.
still lives. It is still in Seattle. It's 2023, and it's still, is it right? And it still exists. Yes. So it still lives. If you ever come to Seattle, you will see the Obama, and it's there.
fantastic.
You can find it online. And it's
How
full
many
of
Elvises do you have?
there's a couple of black velvet Elvis paintings, but we don't want to hog it. We give fair, to bad kitties and, paintings by grandmothers who mean well. And, a lot of paint by numbers, lots of animal, puppies and kitties and big-eyed children, like in the
King.
Margaret King.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's what it's.
They make it so popular that people would donate things to us. They'd say,
really
I found this in Granny's attic, and look how hideous this is. It's probably perfect for your museum. I got to get rid of it.
A picture of
I'm
Dorian Gray
donating
in
it
the
to
attic.
you. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That's very intriguing.
We want good intention, like art that it was somebody had the good intention, but one leg is too long or one boob was up too high.
Oh, that's Picasso.
So you're telling us you have a Picasso? That's impressive.
But it would be like the burgeoning artist that lived down the street, kind of. The grandma who took up a new hobby, sadly.
Right.
Amazing. Well, you guys you're such manifestors of whatever that you create and then share with your community, and we appreciate you so much.
Thank you for inviting us.
Gosh, I mean, this
so
is
many levels. It means so much to me.
well. And would you, before we say adjourn and adieu, if you would please share your sentiment as a DJ?
Oh, yes. Well, many years ago, because in my teens, I grew up in the 60s, and I used to watch all the beach party movies, and I thought they were documentaries. I truly did. And I thought that when I turned 18, I would go in search of that. And anyway, long story short, it didn't work out the way I had planned. However, I still had the love for all that music, all the surf music. And so there was a public radio station in Seattle, and I got my own radio show. It was called Surfing Those Cosmic Waves with your hostess with the mostest, Cosmic Cindy. That was me, my middle name, Cindy.
Great.
And I used to play music by Jan and Dean and the Safaris and the Fantastic Baggies. And Annette Funicello and Donna Loren. And I used to play all this music all the time. And I had this big show, and I would just make up stories, and I would read what I could, because that was before the internet. So you would just get things where you could. And, I would try to impart as much knowledge as I had, but that was before we had a way to spread that. I would be reading Tiger Beat magazine or something. That's where I would get it. And so, then I grew up, and here I am, and somehow I'm in Donna Loren's house.
That's great. And I love what you say about that kind of excitement back then of running those shows or those articles and looking for every little snippet of information that you could find, which was not easy to come by in the early internet.
But before 1990, before the internet.
Yeah.
I mean, and here we are. Now I found my people, and we found each other.
We found each other. That's right.
In Arizona as well.
I know, in Bisbee, Arizona.
That's so bizarre.
Well, I want to thank Joe.
Oh, thank you, Donna.
And his lovely, beautiful wife, Marlow, also known as Cosmic Cindy, to be our guests on Love's a Secret Weapon podcast. And thank you, Dr. Adam, for hooking us up from all the way in Adelaide, Australia.
Thank you, Dr. Adam.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you. Thank you. Absolute pleasure. Until next time, everyone, keep riding those waves or whatever we do around these
Hanging
parts.
10.
Summer, springtime too. I'm seen with someone new. Don't be blue, no, don't be blue. I'll be faithful, I'll be true, always true, true to you. You're the only one for me. You know that I'll always be loving you. Honey, I'll spend my whole life through loving you, loving you. Winter, summer, springtime too. Loving you, loving you makes no difference where I go or what I do. You know that I'll always be loving, 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 loving you. Yes,